Alright, and we're back. Time to put this thing back together. Just did the finish restore all over the body. First thing I'm going to put back in are the neck shims over here. These little guys. Just generally stack them the best way possible in the neck slot like that. And let my fine camera lady come close. Yeah, have them all stacked up, got the washer and all that. I just use little cheap handy things like that. I have to do that because of the bridge. Now the neck just fits right in like that. And then I have to hold it in place nice and tight while I put the neck plate on, which I do like this. I usually put a screw through it first so that's easier to reattach. I've got a couple different sizes of screw in here because I didn't have all the screws I needed to put the guitar together. So I'm going to just put the screw down in here. I'm trying to follow this without obscuring it. I'm just going to hand tighten it in there a little bit first. And I'm going to take that and move that up here. And then we're going to take this screw right here, put that in. Screw right there, put that in. Actually, that one goes down here. You can feel it. I usually know which hole it goes in based upon the feel of the threads. Some thicker two go on the bottom. And then I put this one up here. Basically scrounge around when I got it and put all these parts together. And then we'll just tighten one of them, this one down, to hold it in place. And then we'll tighten the rest after I get the guitar flipped over, since it's both easier on the camera person and easier on me. So that should hold it in place pretty good. I'll put another one down just for extra safety. I just don't want my shims shifting and then all of a sudden my neck falls down a notch. That would not be good. Then I'd have to redo it all over again. And then we tighten this screw here, or just down just enough. And then, well, actually now I can do the all the way tighten, so I'll tighten that one up nice and tight. Make sure we're making good contact with the body. That one nice and tight. This one good and tight. And this one last is good and tight. There we go. So that's all 4 neck screws in. I'll put the strap button on. I have Shaler strap locks on all my guitars. Reason being, they go out live, they get thrown around, they get used pretty hard, so I don't want my strap coming off mid-performance and things going wrong. And that just screws on nice and quick like that. Alright. So, you actually see me assembling a guitar pretty quick. And then right here's the ground wire. We just need to run it through a hole in the cavity right over here. There's a hole down there, and it just runs right up through there like that. It just runs straight on through out there. I always loop it over so when the bridge pins, this part goes in, it'll lock it in place. And you just get your pick guard aligned. And there we go, pick guard's back on the guitar. And then we got all our little pick guard screws right here, these little guys. And they just go right in like this. I just place them in place and then start screwing them down when it's all said and done. Alright, got pick guard 1, 2, 3, 4. Several of these screws to go in. So I'll tighten all those down. But I'll do that after I place all the other components down too, because there's several components. And got one. I think there's one over here. Yeah, that is the last one. It's hard to keep track of those pesky pickguard screws. And then I've got the tailpiece, which goes on like this. And the holes are a little pre-pilot drilled for me, so I can just drop it in without even having to do any finger tightening or anything to hold them in place. Except that one. And then we drop the bridge posts in. This one right here. This one right here. It should just wobble right in. Yep. And we drop the bridge back on. There we go. And the next part is just tighten all these screws. So it's just like that. Then we'll put the strings on. And we're done. But right quick, I'm going to tighten all these screws down.
Great screwing.
Yeah. Alright. Yeah. Looks totally different than the guitar you saw earlier in the vid, huh? I guess I should say series of vids. There we go. Screw all those down. Screw this down. These are going to be the most difficult of the lot to get down. And I'm going to... That one goes in a little funky. There we go. Need a slightly different bit for those to tighten them down, so I've got a wider bit that fits those screws better. This guitar has a few parts I've swapped out from other guitars, and it was even missing a few screws, so I had to donate a few from my spare part stash to it. Make sure those are down good and tight. Make sure that it's got good sustain and good tone. This last one goes right here. There we are. And that's all the parts back on. Now it's time to put the strings on. I'm using a cheaper set of strings from the 222 First Act series. Got them at Target. They're like $4. I usually use Ernie balls or Fenders, but sometimes I'll use these in a pinch if it's the only thing I can get. Come in a little plastic package like this. And you got all your gauges marked on them. There's a 9, that's your high E. There's 11. That's your B, 16 is the G, 24 is the D, 32 is the A, and 42 is the low E. And on the First Act packages it even shows you which string it is. If you turn it around that way, then it shows you. Alright. Now, first one I always start with, most people start with a high E. I prefer to start with the low E just because it's easier. First thing I do is just uncoil and unwind the strings. On some of these brands it can be a real pain in the neck to do that. So I'm gonna take these off, out like that. There's the whole length of the string. On this kind of guitar, these harmonies in Gaia tones and everything with this type of tailpiece, I just bend it up like that, little bits, and it'll hook under there a lot more easily. And there we go. And then I run it down to the peg head. And then we run it through the capstan. On the low E, you don't need much string. I'm probably only going to use I only need about 1.5 inches of slack on it, and about that much poking out, which is about like 5¼ inches or something like that. And then I just tighten it up just enough to get it on there. And some guitar shops have like elevated stands. I don't yet. Otherwise I would be using that for this. And there we go. Strings on. Fit it over the saddle. And I just gotta raise that side a little bit. Probably gonna have to do some re-shimming, so we'll come back in the last part and then we can see how it sounds. I'm back. We've got her back together. You can see, totally reassembled, new strings installed. Show you a little something at the headstock right quick. I don't know if you can see right here, but you can probably see it right here. I take the strings and I use I cut them and then I go ahead and bend them over so they don't poke anybody. And then I just fold them away. That one's left out to make it just a little more obvious though. Anyway, let's hear some sounds out of it. If you hear a string that's out of tune, what you need to do is you need to pull it up like this down the length of the neck. That's called stretching the string. So you do that at each string a little bit. Just try and turn it off. Just do that to each and every string and retune them until they stop needing to be tuned up. There are a couple of reasons for this. One, the metal has to stretch in, and two, and the bigger part is up at the top here on the cap stands, though these may look like they're wrapped up totally tight, they aren't yet. So what happens is when you're pulling on the string, it tightens these windings up next to each other, making the string more stable, and it just basically tightens it around the cap stand tighter. That way then it doesn't slip out of tune. And after that, as you can hear, that sounds pretty dreadful, so I just retune. So I tune my low E. I got perfect pitch, so I can just do it by ear. And there we go, perfectly in tune. There you go. All cleaned up, ready to rock.